Hi, welcome back to All Baking Bootcamp. I'm Mia Rigden, nutritionist, chef, and the founder of Rasa. Today we are making a gluten and dairy-free pumpkin pie. This is hands down my absolute favorite Thanksgiving dessert. To be honest, I don't even mess with the other pies on the table because I just love pumpkin pie. And my grandma always made the best pumpkin pie, so trying to make a gluten and dairy-free version of it was tricky, but I think that we're up for the challenge. So we're gonna start by making the crust, which we know is a very important part of the pie. It's gotta be flaky, it's gotta be the right consistency, all those things. So today what we're gonna be using is a gluten-free all-purpose flour. And instead of butter, we're gonna be using a refined coconut oil. So it's really important that if you're making this recipe that you use the refined coconut oil. It's gonna hold better and it doesn't have that coconutty flavor, all right? We also have an egg, a little bit of coconut sugar, and we are using some xanthan gum. Gluten-free baking sometimes is hard to bind because gluten is really the binder. So the xanthan gum is gonna help with that. If you don't wanna use it, you can omit it, it'll still work. But this is gonna help to create a crust that's a little bit more intact. All right, so first thing we're gonna throw our dry ingredients. So our flour, xanthan gum, coconut sugar, and some salt. I'm gonna give it a blitz. All right, that's good. Okay, so now we're gonna throw the coconut oil in. So same if you were gonna be making this recipe with butter, the idea is that you want each granule of flour to be coated in fat. That's what makes a really buttery, flaky crust. So make sure your coconut oil is cold and not runny, and then just pulse it. Okay, so it's looking like little pebbles or beads of sand. And then I'm gonna add our egg in, give it another pulse. And then we're gonna let this sit in the fridge for at least 1 hour. Okay, that looks good. Gonna use our spatula to mound the pastry dough in the center and let it chill in the fridge. Okay, so our dough is chilling. It's just about to be ready. So I'm gonna make our filling and then we'll roll out the dough, fill the pie, and bake it. I really like to make sure that my pumpkin pie filling is super, super creamy. So using the blender ensures there aren't any pumpkin chunks. And also we're using coconut milk today, and sometimes that can be a little bit chunky. So putting it in the blender just makes for a very smooth and silky pumpkin pie. So here we've got a cup of coconut milk. A can of pumpkin, and this is not pumpkin pie mix, this is just pumpkin. ½ cup of maple syrup, so that's the sweetener that we're using today. All things considered, this recipe has ½ cup of maple syrup and 2 teaspoons of coconut sugar. So it's very much a low sugar recipe. And then we've got some vanilla extract. And we're using 3 eggs. I like using 3 eggs because it adds a little bit of more firmness to the custard, which is what the pie filling is. And also we're gonna get some more protein and some healthy fats in there. So that's better for blood sugar balancing, and it's gonna add some more nutrition to the pie. For spices today, we're using some cinnamon, and then we have cloves, allspice, and ginger as well. And then of course, good hit of salt. And we're just gonna blitz this. this looks really good. So we've got our pumpkin pie filling. I'm just gonna set it aside and we're gonna get our dough, roll it out, fill our pie, and bake it. I took our dough out of the fridge. It's looking great. I'm gonna roll this out. So I'm gonna sprinkle a little bit of extra flour on the top and on the bottom, just to make sure it doesn't stick. Put another piece of parchment on top. There we go. Coconut oil, it can melt and be very liquidy, but then when you put it in the fridge, it gets really hard. So you might want to take it out and let it sit for a few minutes, or you gotta kind of like work it. Oh, there we go. So it might feel like it's crumbly and like it's falling apart, but that just means you gotta warm up that coconut oil a little bit, and then it'll start rolling out just fine. Gonna do a little dough check. This is looking really good. I always put, like, if there's some like crumbly pieces on it, I kind of put them back on the center and then roll them out. But this is starting to look good. And then once it's larger than your pie plate, that's when we can do the transfer. Just gonna sprinkle a little more. So the transfer, this is the trickiest part, but the good news is that it's really forgiving. So we're just gonna put the pie plate right on here, stick your hand underneath and give it a flip. All right, so there's gonna be some holes or areas that we need to patch up, and that is totally fine, to be expected. Slowly peel up the parchment. So as you can see, this is not perfect, but don't worry, we will patch everything up and it's gonna look beautiful in no time. Okay, so we've got our dough set here in our pie plate, and now literally all we need to do is pour the filling in and bake it. So I also really like it when the filling goes up to the top of the pie plate, which we've got going on here. This looks fantastic. So we're going to put this in the oven at 400 degrees for 15 minutes, and then we're gonna drop it down to 350 and bake for another hour at least. So start checking after 60 minutes and 60 to 70 minutes, and then, every 5 minutes, do a little test, do a jiggle, see if it's moving, and when it doesn't jiggle anymore, when you try and take it out, you can also put a cake tester in to see if it comes out clean. That's when you know that it's ready. So I let our pie cool for 2 hours before I cut it. It's really important that your pie is very, very cool before you slice into it. So if you're making this for a holiday party, make sure to do your pie in advance. So I cut a piece, put a little whipped cream on it, and now we're ready to try. Super creamy, silky, smooth. The perfect amount of sweetness. It's not overly sweet, but it's definitely got a hint of that maple syrup in there. Nice spices. Crust is nice and flaky. I think we nailed it. Check out the description below to find the full recipe, and don't forget to subscribe to Well+Good's YouTube channel so you don't miss another episode of All Baking Bootcamp.